The development of Pokémon Legend ZA is one of the most intriguing contexts in the franchise in years. From the beginning, it was clear that Game Freak was betting high on a new look for Pokémon, focusing the entire experience on Lumiose City, the heart of the Kalos region. And this means a lot to those who always wanted to see the series truly explore the full potential of large cities inspired by the real world. The proposal to revitalize Lumiose and transform the familiar dynamic between humans and Pokémon sounds not just like an evolution in design, but as a declaration of intent from the team after decades of tradition. The choice of Lumiose as the setting goes beyond nostalgia for Pokémon X and Y fans. There is a hint of critique of progress, modernization, and the search for harmony in urban environments, themes that resonate strongly with the real-world scenario of cities in constant transformation. Being part of an urban renewal project, the player ends up actively participating in this transition, directly influencing the future of the metropolis, while discovering secrets and challenges. Something that reminds me of how games, when they want to, can be subversive and provocative even under the colorful Pokémon universe. Another point that draws attention is how the development team used historical elements and references to the real world. The urban renewal of Lumiose is a clear allusion to the modernization of Paris in the 19th century, with architecture inspired by Art Nouveau and Belle Époque. This cultural backdrop not only adds an aesthetic layer, but creates an atmosphere of transition between eras, something extremely promising for those who enjoy video games that go beyond the basics, mixing social history and adventure. I feel that, for the first time, it might be possible to look at the setting of Pokémon and see something truly relevant about our own world. The very choice to limit the playable world to Lumiose City shows courage, a break from the obsession with gigantic and generic maps. The developer seems to be seeking meaning in every street, character, and mission, which could be a watershed for the design of future titles in the series. For me, Legend ZA represents the chance for Pokémon to finally mature, not only technically, but as a work that challenges and provokes its audience. Even without having played it, you can already see that the ambition is real, and that in itself already makes the development context of this game one of the most relevant and exciting in the franchise's history. The story of this title unfolds in the near future, where Lumiose is undergoing an urban renewal project with the goal of transforming the city into a modern space that accommodates both humans and Pokémon. This setting is a historical transition, perhaps reflecting a Belle Époque-style era, a period of great cultural and architectural flourishing in France, which brings a special charm to the game's setting. The proposal to show Lumiose in this typical environment of the transition to modernity creates an interesting and different connection from what has been seen in the franchise, which usually explores more fantastical or traditional worlds. In the plot, the player takes on the role of a young trainer who arrives in Lumiose to participate in a secret project led by Professor Sycamore, known for his importance in Pokémon X and Y. This project involves the use of a machine called ZIA, which has the ability to manipulate time and space, allowing the protagonist to travel to different eras and locations within Lumiose to investigate the city's history and its Pokémon. This time, travel feature adds a rich layer to the narrative, enabling the exploration of past events that reveal the roots of the relationship between humans and Pokémon in the city, which promises to be a very immersive and original experience for the series. One of the most interesting aspects of the story is the involvement of the legendary Pokémon Zygarde. He seems to have a special connection with the protagonist, which inserts a mythical and mysterious element into the plot. The presence of Zygarde, which is a creature linked to the balance of the Kalos ecosystem, elevates the tone of the story to something greater than just common battles and achievements. Furthermore, the mythology of Kalos, especially the story of the enigmatic Az, a legendary character who created a powerful weapon to end a war between humans and Pokémon, could be an influence or indirect reference for the plot, creating bridges with the region's past and enriching the narrative background of ZIA. Personally, I think this story is a great refreshment for the series. It mixes the nostalgia of the Kalos region with a futuristic and unprecedented vision, bringing the old and the new closer in a way that seems very promising to me. The presence of time travel elements and a city that is in real transformation give a narrative weight that was not so explored before in Pokémon, creating a feeling of really contributing to an important historical moment within the Pokémon world. I love the idea of this living city, full of life, interaction, and stories to tell, giving an air of grandeur and immersion for those who like to get lost in the universe of games. This shows that Pokémon can indeed reinvent its formula and continue to bring surprises to older and newer fans. Pokémon Legend Z surprised me by moving away from the old turn-based battle pattern of the franchise and opting for a real-time action approach, almost reminiscent of games like Xenoblade, but with that Pokémon touch that calls for quick strategy. Here, there's no more waiting for the enemy's turn. Each ability has an individual cooldown, so you need to think fast if you want to survive the more intense battles. What's interesting is that, even at the beginning of the game, moves that were previously ignored in traditional RPGs end up becoming useful. This kept me on my toes and, to be honest, brought a completely different energy, more alive and immediate, to the gameplay. I felt they finally took a bold step in this direction, delivering a dynamism that was missing in the franchise. Another point I really enjoyed was how the battles unfold within the urban wild zones of Lumiose. Here, the integration between the city elements, Pokémon, and trainer became much more organic. The fights are not limited to open fields or arenas. The environment directly influences each dispute. For example, certain attacks leave lasting effects on the battlefield, like a mist that covers the area and can hinder movement, or Pokémon using parts of the scenery to surprise the player. This creates unexpected and even hilarious situations like seeing a Pokémon fall from a roof or an alpha attacking from the top of a staircase. I admit that these moments brought back that feeling of discovery and improvisation that I had been missing in Pokémon for a long time. The capture system also went through a nice overhaul. Now, catching Pokémon requires more than just throwing a Pokéball. Many flee the moment they notice your presence, so approaching stealthily or attacking first is part of the routine. This adds a touch of constant tension to the exploration, since any mistake could mean losing a hard-to-find monster. In fact, I had to adjust my approach several times, feeling that satisfaction when a tricky capture finally worked out. The automation of items, where you just have to walk over them to collect, also simplifies life and keeps the focus on the action, without so many unnecessary interruptions. At first, I confess that I found the new rhythm of using items during battle strange, since using potions or revives requires opening the menu and respecting a cooldown time. This can break the flow of fights, especially in moments of greater tension. I thought they could have provided shortcuts like they do for Pokeballs, making combat even more direct. But, over time, I got used to it and started to think with more anticipation, planning each action better. A change in mentality for someone used to the comfort of the classic system. I didn't lose the will to continue exploring because of this, but it's a note that this part can still be polished in future updates. The variety of Pokémon in the open areas, at least in the initial demo, was a bit underwhelming. I saw few different species while exploring Lumiose. On one hand, I understand the proposal, since the city is the big stage this time, and it wouldn't make sense to expect huge biodiversity in the middle of an urban zone. But I hope that, as we advance to other regions of the game, more variety will appear to sustain the interest in exploration and shiny hunting. Even so, the game compensates for this with design intelligence, delivering living environments and emergent situations, avoiding that feeling of empty repetition. Overall, the gameplay delivered a creative action experience, with truly dynamic battles and an environmental integration that takes the game out of the franchise's conservative comfort zone. It has its stumbles, of course. Some explanations were confusing and certain usability decisions still deserve adjustment. But I'm enjoying experimenting with a Pokémon that makes me think and react every second, not just press buttons out of reflex. The game's greatest merit for me is precisely this, making the adventure feel more personal and present, almost as if I were really there with my little monsters facing that chaotic and secret-filled city together. The graphics caught my attention from the very first trailers, bringing an interesting evolution to the franchise in terms of visual aesthetics and the detailing of cities and characters. The game makes a notable effort to build a vibrant world, mixing futuristic elements with the classic charm of Pokémon settings, resulting in urban environments full of life and architectural details that make you want to explore every corner. Unlike previous games, I felt that ZA really invests in giving visual personality to its cities and NPCs, something that was lacking in some recent titles in the series. Another point that draws a lot of attention is the lighting, which finally seems to have found its place within the Pokémon universe. It's not something super sophisticated like a latest generation AAA, but for the franchise's standards, I see an evolution in how the lights reflected on facades or neon signs help create an immersive atmosphere in the urban areas of Lumiose City. The shadows are also more natural, and the day and night cycle contributes a lot to bringing the scenery to life. with color variations that make each walk different depending on the time of day you explore the city. The design of the Pokémon in turn is much more refined. I noticed that there was a greater concern with the textures of the creatures, from the shine of their fur to the details in the eyes of each creature. Although it still doesn't compare to the hyper-realism of other current titles, the art direction bets on a balance between stylization and naturalism, which, in my opinion, makes the Pokémon more captivating. This visual choice pleases me because it respects the legacy of the little monsters without falling into sameness, managing to bring something new for old fans and for those who are just arriving. Regarding the graphical interface of menus, battles, and interactive elements, ZIA does a decent job with cleaner and well-positioned HUDs that allow you to appreciate the details of the world without cluttering the screen. I have to be honest, I felt that some visual effects like transitions and attack animations were improved, giving more impact to the battles. This makes all the difference for those who like to see the result of each blow in real time. The menus follow this futuristic feel of the game, using transparencies and vibrant colors that match well with the urban cyberpunk proposal. The urban scenarios deserve special praise. In addition to the variety of buildings, streets, cafes, and kiosks, I noticed that there is a greater concern in replicating the dynamism of a real city, with autonomous cars, passers-by, and flashing lights, which helps to create the feeling of being in a truly bustling metropolis. For those who enjoy exploring details, it's gratifying to find small visual Easter eggs and fictional advertisements scattered on the walls. These elements contribute to increasing immersion and are an invitation for curious players to lose hours just observing the game's environment. In general, the graphical evolution of Legend ZA is noticeable and welcome, especially for those who like a Pokémon world with more visual richness. From my point of view, this is the best graphics package I've seen in the franchise so far, showing that they finally paid attention to what matters for immersion and the fascination of exploring a Pokémon universe as it deserves. The performance offers a very interesting experience, especially when comparing the two consoles, the Switch 1 and the Switch 2, although it still brings some points of concern. On the original Switch, the feeling is of a more limited performance, with a frame rate that hardly exceeds 30 FPS, even reaching around 20 FPS in some more demanding moments, which is already expected for older hardware. Many players expected that, being a more ambitious title with real-time battles, performance could be a stumbling block, but in practice, it remains at a reasonable level, although not as fluid as we would like. On the Switch 2, the improvements are evident. The resolution is clearly higher, and the frame rate improves significantly, achieving a more satisfactory fluidity, especially in combat and exploration scenes. The side-by-side comparison shows a game that, in the new version, really looks prettier and smoother to play, which greatly transforms the visual and gameplay experience. Still, there is a certain expectation that the performance on the Switch 2 may fluctuate in some more intense sections, with the game running close to 60 FPS, but without complete guarantees, depending on the areas and combat. The main differential of the Switch 2 version is the ability to run the game at a higher resolution and with significantly improved FPS stability, which for those who are more demanding, has a great weight when deciding to invest in the new platform. In practice, the experience on the Switch 2 really delivers smoother gameplay, with less lag and fewer frame drops, which for a real-time combat game makes all the difference. Still, the performance leap is not perfect, as there are moments when the game still seems to struggle to maintain this fluidity, especially in moments of heavier weather with rain and other atmospheric conditions that seem to impact the frame rate. I see that the performance of Legend ZA on the Switch 1 is acceptable given the hardware limitations, but clearly doomed to a more frustrating experience for those seeking fluidity and more detailed graphics. Still, the connection to the Pokémon world manages to compensate for these limitations, delivering a sense of freedom and action that was previously only possible in faster fighting or platforming games. For the Switch 2, the improvement is noticeable, and what could be a slippery game full of frame drops turns into a visually cleaner and more enjoyable adventure to play, although some more complex moments may still challenge this potential. My personal reflection is that the performance of Pokémon Legend ZA represents an important evolution, but not yet a final point in the search for the perfect balance between graphics, frame rate, and game experience. The proposal of real-time combat, with a faster response and a higher resolution on the Switch 2, shows that Nintendo is striving to modernize its series, even if the base of the original Switch is still a clear limitation. For me, the experience fits better on the Switch 2, where the game can be more appreciated without so many performance compromises, but it is important to always consider the additional price for this more enhanced version. The decision between buying on day one or waiting is a real dilemma, especially considering the franchise's recent history. On one hand, the Legends line started with Arceus was a breath of fresh air, acclaimed for its innovative gameplay and more dynamic approach. On the other hand, the launch of Scarlet and Violet left a negative mark due to serious performance issues and bugs. Therefore, the central question is not whether the game will be conceptually interesting, but whether it will be technically competent at launch. Buying at launch has its undeniable merits. You participate in the collective discovery, exploring the mysteries of Lumiose City's renewal along with the global community. Avoiding spoilers is a big attraction, allowing each new mega evolution and each plot twist to be genuinely surprising. The experience of exploring a new Pokémon world simultaneously with millions of other fans creates a unique energy that is lost when you arrive later. However, patience may be the greatest virtue here. Game Freak has a pattern of releasing games that, although ambitious, lack technical polish. It is very likely that Legend ZA will arrive with frame drops, visual glitches, and other problems that can hinder immersion. By waiting a few weeks or even a month, you allow the first correction updates to be released. In addition, you will have access to a multitude of detailed technical analyses, knowing exactly what you are buying and ensuring that your investment is in a more stable and enjoyable version of the game. This game is clearly indicated for a specific type of player. The one who felt reinvigorated by Pokémon Legends Arceus and is tired of the traditional formula of the main series. If you value innovation in gameplay, such as real-time capture, a more interactive world, and a greater focus on exploration and action, over cutting-edge graphics, this title was designed for you. Fans of the 6th generation and especially of the Mega Evolution mechanic will find a feast here. It is a game for those looking for a different Pokémon experience, more mature and with more engaging mechanics. In my opinion, the most sensible thing is to wait. The frustration caused by technical problems can ruin the first impression of a game, something that is almost impossible to recover. The precedent of Scarlet and Violet is a very clear warning not to get carried away by excitement alone. I prefer to wait and be sure that I will play the best possible version of the game, free of bugs that break the experience. The joy of exploring Kalos will be much greater without the distraction of performance issues. Unless you have a professional reason to play on day one, waiting is an insurance policy for your fun. The final decision depends on your profile. If you are a fervent fan who needs to be at the forefront of the community and can tolerate possible technical flaws, buying at launch may be worth it. However, for the majority of players looking for the best experience for their money, waiting a few weeks is the smartest and safest strategy. But in the end, the final decision is up to you alone. Well, that was the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and see you next time.